Hi, Emmanuel family. This is Amy again with another Encouraging the Heart video series. And so today what I want to talk to you all about is anxiety, because that's something that we are all experiencing, I think, an increase in right now during, these kind of crazy, uncertain times. And so I want to talk a little bit about how anxiety shows up in our body, and I'm going to give you then a practical tool you can use to help combat anxiety when you're feeling it. Okay, so first of all, it's really normal if right now you are finding yourself feeling a lot more anxious than you normally do. So for some of you, anxiety might be a really familiar thing. Maybe it's something you've struggled with before, you know how it shows up in your body. But for others of you, this might be kind of new. It might be catching you by surprise how anxious you're feeling. But I know that with COVID-19 and how that's impacted our lives, there's a ton of uncertainty about the future. There's a ton of changing information, changing guidelines, and all of that breeds a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for us. And so if you're not someone that normally experiences anxiety, I want to talk to you about how anxiety shows up in our body. And so it can show up in our body as sensations, and it can also show up in our mind and our thoughts. And so first of all, in our body, anxiety shows up as a fight or flight response, which means it includes things like a racing heart, rapid breathing, rapid shallow breathing, sweating, right, hot flashes, some upset stomach feeling or feeling sick to your stomach. All of those are physical indications that you are feeling anxious. And it also shows up mentally in our thoughts, usually in racing thoughts, right? So we're kind of ruminating about things, right? We just can't get things out of our mind. We're constantly thinking about the what ifs or what do we need to do. It probably keeps us up at night. And so anxiety shows up both mentally in how we think and physically in our bodies. But one of the biggest things anxiety does is it prevents us from living in the present. So when we are anxious about something, we are usually living in either the past or in the future. Okay, so in the past, we're worried about things that happened in the past, right? We're kind of ruminating about things. We're going over the what ifs, the regrets, the things we wish we could have done differently, but feeling kind of trapped in worries and anxieties about our past. Or we're living in the future, where we are constantly trying to predict what's going to happen. We're trying to prepare for future scenarios that haven't even happened yet, but we're worried about the future and what the future is going to be like. But when we are feeling high anxiety, we are not doing a good job living just in the present moment and acknowledging the present moment. And so because of that, I want to teach you a technique that's called a mindfulness technique. So mindfulness is a term that's kind of thrown around a lot these days. So if you don't know what it means, or if it sounds kind of like a weird, scary thing, I promise it's not. Mindfulness just means learning how to be really fully present in any given moment. That's what mindfulness of. It means mindful awareness of the present moment and intentionally slowing down to acknowledge what we're experiencing fully in the present moment. And so mindfulness is a really helpful technique with anxiety because, again, anxiety pulls us to the past or to the future. And especially with everything happening in our world right now, I think most of us are being pulled towards worrying about the past or worrying about the future. But with mindfulness, we can train ourselves to slow down and appreciate the present moment. That's what mindfulness is. And so I want to teach you my favorite mindfulness technique, which is called 5 senses mindfulness. And this, I'm going to walk you through it. It's something you can use anytime, anywhere. And one of the reasons I like this particular exercise is because you can also involve other people in it, like your children if you have them around, which most of you do right now. Okay, so let me teach you 5 senses mindfulness. We're going to work through our 5 senses, and we're going to start with naming, just pausing wherever you are and naming 5 things that you can see. So this is the easiest step, right? You just look around in your field of vision and you start naming what are 5 things that you can see from where you are in that present moment. Each step is going to get a little more difficult. So after you've named to yourself 5 things that you can see, you want to name 4 things that you can feel in that present moment. Okay, now when I say this step, this does not mean that we start picking things up and saying, like, oh, I can feel my phone or I can feel my coffee cup if I pick that up. No, we want to just freeze. So without even moving our body, just freezing, pausing in that moment, we want to really bring our intentional awareness to what are 4 physical sensations I can feel right now that normally I would just not be aware of and totally ignore. So for example, if I pause without even, picking up anything, I can feel my glasses resting on my nose. I can feel that sensation. I can feel my hair hitting my ear. I can feel, the bottom of my foot solid against the ground. I can feel my watch on my wrist. Right? Those are just some examples of what I can feel in this moment without even really moving at all. So try that. Try to name 4 things that you can physically feel without even moving. Okay, next you move on to naming 3 things that you can hear. Okay, so if you're in a quieter room, this will be a little more difficult. If you're driving or on a walk, you have more kind of stimuli. But even here in my office, if I pause, I can hear the traffic outside. I can hear my white noise fan going, and I can hear the fan of my computer. So there are 3 things that I can hear right now. And so try this as well at your home. Try to kind of slow yourself down and pay attention to what are 3 things that you can hear. Maybe you can hear your children playing in the other room. Maybe you can hear, your spouse on a Zoom call in the other room. Whatever it is, name 3 things that you can hear. After that, we move on to naming 2 things that we can smell. Okay, so this can be pleasant or unpleasant, but just intentionally can bring our awareness to our sense of smell and what we are smelling in the present moment. So maybe you can smell the perfume you sprayed on earlier, or the shampoo you used, or if dinner is cooking, or if you have a cup of coffee on your desk, or maybe you smell the trash that you haven't taken out, right? And so anything that you can smell, name 2 things to yourself. And then the final step, often the hardest, is pausing and naming 1 thing that you can taste in this moment. So if you've recently eaten or had a stick of gum, that's easier because you can just kind of intentionally notice oh, can I still taste some of that on my tongue? But if not, then it's just pausing and being aware of what does my mouth taste like right now, which is not something we normally pause and ask ourselves because that would be really weird, right? Unless we're doing this exercise. And so if you work through all 5 of those steps, what you're going to notice is afterwards you're going to feel really grounded in the present moment. You're going to feel calmer. You're going to feel really intentionally aware of what's happening in the present, right? And so again, you worked through 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So if you go through all 5 of those steps, it's pretty quick, should only take about a minute or 2. And again, you should feel a sense of calm, and you should feel just really rooted in the present moment. You should have more awareness of how does my body feel right now? What am I experiencing? Where am I right now in this moment? Not worrying about the future, not worrying about the past, but in this moment, here's what I'm experiencing. And that's why I think it's a really great tool for anxiety. And so I encourage you guys to practice it. You can do this multiple times a day. You can do it anywhere that you are, driving, at home. And again, another reason I think this is a great tool for this particular season is you can use it, you can include your kids in it. And so most of you that have kids are home with them all day right now. You might not have a minute to do a mindfulness exercise by yourself, but you can include your kids in it. It's really easy, even young kids, to invite them in and say, okay, guys, let's pause for a second. Can you help me? Let's all name 5 things we can see. Let's all name 4 things we can feel. So it's an easy way to work in some regulation for you when you're with your kids too and you don't have a minute alone. Okay, so that's another reason why I think it's a great tool for this season. But I encourage all of you to practice that. I hope it's helpful, and I hope that you can use it this week and get a sense of calm and a sense of groundedness to where we are in the present. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.